This is Cowabungie. And this is Cowabungo.
But the turtles for your 16-bit system are Cowabunga!
As the 90s rolled on, and the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre became more popular, it became inevitable that along with action platformers, there would be a variety of properties that would adapt their material into a side-scrolling beat-em-up game, and these would yield varying results. As many of these games followed more of an arcade style of gameplay where you had to go through all in one credit, with most games having no continues or save points throughout, personally I felt games of this style would be more suited to weekend rentals rather than purchases. So as a result, there weren't too many of these in my collection before I started expanding out my game collecting and trying to get a variety of games. And while doing research for this video, I was surprised at how many competent platformers are on this system, and I definitely found more than a few that were exceptionally disappointing. Let's continue on with more beat-em-up games. Marvel Superheroes and War of the Gems was developed by Capcom and published for the Super Nintendo in 1996, and this game is based upon the events in the Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War. In this game, you are tasked as playing as one of the Marvel superheroes to seek out the Infinity Gems before they fall into the wrong hands. Captain America, Iron Man, Wolverine, Hulk, or Spider-Man are the characters you can play as in this game. Each character is unique based upon their superpower and their character stats, and each character's health bar is separate and can be carried over between missions. If a character is defeated, they must be revived individually with the appropriate item. Overall, I didn't find this one to be a bad experience. Again, the big hook for me was the Marvel comics and the fact that they were talking about the Infinity Gauntlet that was covered in the comic books, not necessarily the version in the movies. So if you're a Marvel fan, you're going to get an extra kick out of that, but I really do think this is a competent side-scrolling beat-em-up game on its own, and I would give it around a 7 or an 8 out of 10, with an emphasis being on the Marvel crowd, but I think also anyone who likes side-scrolling beat-em-up games should try this one out. The Ninja Warriors was developed by Natsume for the Super Nintendo and published by Taito in Japan and North America in 1994. It is the follow-up to the 1987 arcade game of the same name, and in this game you play as one of 3 ninja androids, each with their own different attributes and unique set of moves, including jumps, dashes, throws, and other attacks. And this game really hits home with me because it is definitely one of the better beat-em-up games on the Super Nintendo. When playing this, I couldn't help but be reminded of some of the beat-em-up games I had played in the arcades, and even more recently on the Neo Geo console. The graphics are very well done, and the game controls beautifully. I will say I did find the game to be a bit tedious and difficult in certain areas, but what beat-em-up game really isn't? Overall, I'd personally give this game around a 9 out of 10, recommending it as one of the more essential games to play, with my only reservation being the high price to collect this game physically. I will note that if you're not able to get it for original hardware, this game was kind of remastered and released as Ninja Saviors Return of the Warriors for more modern systems like the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. Rival Turf was developed and released by Jaleco on the Super Nintendo in 1992, being the first in the so-called Rushing Beat trilogy. The second of which was Brawl Brothers, which I've already covered in the previous segment of this video. And this game I would classify as just being okay. It's definitely not as fun as Brawl Brothers for me, and I can tell you that it's not as well polished. It's not terrible by any means, but there's really nothing here that makes me want to come back to it, unless I just want to play the first part of this series. As such, I would recommend this game only to people who wanted to get more beat-em-ups on the system, or mainly fans of the Rushing Beat trilogy. As a standalone title, I'd give this about a 5 out of 10. On the other end of the Rushing Beat trilogy is the game The Peacekeepers. This game was once again developed by Jaleco and was published in 1994 in North America for the Super Nintendo, coming out in Japan the previous December. This game has a total of 6 selectable characters, and up to 2 players can play in the main game mode simultaneously. There is also a versus mode in which you can face off against 4 other players with the Super Multi-Tap. The game is fairly standard for both the series and a beat-em-up, but where the game distinguishes itself is the fact that they include new special attacks, branching gameplay paths, and multiple game endings. I've seen reviews of this game be mixed around a 6 or a 7 out of 10, and I would say it ranks at about a 7 out of 10 for me. Out of the entire series, I don't think you can go wrong with Brawl Brothers or this game, but I think Brawl Brothers would be the one out of this series to get if you were just going to get one of them. Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage was developed by Software Creations and published by Acclaim Entertainment and its subsidiary LJN in 1994 for both the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. Like some of the other Marvel games, this is also based on a comic book story arc, and it features numerous Marvel characters such as Spider-Man, Venom, as well as Captain America, Black Cat, Iron Fist, and a bunch of other characters, teaming up to battle an onslaught of villains led by Carnage. And this game I have mixed feelings about. Again, I feel like this game knocks it out of the park by duplicating the Marvel art style of the comics, as the 16-bit hardware seems very well suited to duplicating the black line drawn and solid colored filled Marvel characters and environments. What breaks it down for me is the gameplay, as I really found myself getting bored of this title pretty quickly. Strangely, reviews of this game when it first released were somewhat critical of the graphics, and I didn't really see too much of a problem there. But again, there was nothing really remarkable about the gameplay, and I did find it to be tedious pretty quickly, but that's maybe because I didn't get all the way through the game before putting it down. Overall, I'd be willing to give it around a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but definitely recommending this to Marvel fans more than anybody else. Venom and Spider-Man in Separation Anxiety is the sequel to Maximum Carnage, coming to the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis in 1995. And this game, I feel like is a bit more mediocre than the other one. I've seen reviews of this game range between 3.5 to 6 out of 10, and I would rank it at about a 5 out of 10 myself. And personally, I would recommend staying away from this game unless you want to collect it just for that box art to sit on the shelf, because you really don't want to play this one. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse was developed and published by Capcom for the Super Nintendo in 1994, and this game offers a good change of pace for Marvel fans. In this game, you control 5 of the X-Men, including Beast, Cyclops, Gambit, Psylocke, and Wolverine. After guiding each of them through their own dedicated levels, the player can then select which level to complete next, as well as which team member to complete it with. Of course, the main goal of the game is to get through each stage until you face off against the game's final boss, Magneto. Just like in games like Mega Man, you can choose the order in which you want to tackle the stages. After beating the first 5 stages, you get a password so you can continue your progress. Electronic Gaming Monthly's reviewers declared it to be the best of the X-Men games to date, and in more modern game reviews, this game has been recalled fondly. I personally hadn't played this game before playing it for this review, and to be honest, it left a very solid first impression, but I'm going to let you know that review scores of this game range between 7 and 9 out of 10. Right now, as an initial impression, I'd say it's about an 8 out of 10 for me, and I think this would be a good one if you just like beat-em-up games, or if you like the Marvel franchises, and definitely if you like both. The Tick was developed by Software Creations and released by Fox Interactive in 1994. It is based off the Fox Kids animated series of the same name and based on a comic book. The game's art style is done well enough and definitely matches what I remember from the TV show as a kid, but I did happen to notice an abundance of the color blue on screen, and different shades. Overall, I felt the gameplay was pretty standard. It was kind of neat that they had a isometric perspective so where you can move up and down on the screen as well as side to side. But overall, in terms of gameplay, it's not really groundbreaking and definitely very repetitive after a little bit. This is again my first time playing it, and I was bored within the first 10 minutes. The biggest thing I found irritating about the gameplay is that you can have some instant deaths by jumping off the edge of some of the obstacles. Looking back at other game reviews of this title, and I can see I am not alone in my opinions, although GamePro said that they felt that they succeeded in replicating the humor of the comic book, but that the low frame rate and the, quote, endless wave of the same enemies, end quote, made the experience unenjoyable. I've seen review scores of this title between 4 and 5 out of 10, and I would say, based on my first impression, that is probably accurate. But maybe it gets better as you get towards the end. I don't know. If any of you played this, please let me know. Legend was originally developed by Arcade Zone and published in North America by Sika for the Super Nintendo in April of 1994. This game takes place in the fictional kingdom of Selleck during the Middle Ages, where players take control of Night Warriors in an attempt to defeat the corrupt son of the king before he manages to harness power and take over the kingdom. The game plays like an arcade-style side-scrolling hack-and-slash beat-em-up game similar to that of Golden Axe and the King of Dragons. You take control of one of the warriors through 7 stages, battling against an assortment of enemies along the journey, with the main objective being to defeat the game's antagonist. You have different abilities, such as using your sword, kicks, and magic spells in order to counterattack enemies, and there are also special moves that can be performed by pressing a combination of buttons. You can do so at the cost of some of your health. Just like in Golden Axe, between levels you can pick up some power-ups in a bonus round. Overall, this game received more of a mixed reception when it released initially, but more modern reviews have been kinder to this game. I've seen review scores of this game range between 6 to 9 out of 10, and I would say it's a good solid 7.5, 8 out of 10. The stages can get long and repetitive after a while, so I'd give yourself a break if you're having trouble with it. Stone Protectors is both a game and a TV show that I missed out on back in the day, and my modern playthrough of this game was not very impressive either. I will say the graphics and art style of this game are very strong, but where it failed for me is largely in the gameplay department, with frustrating controls and very difficult to pull off special attacks. This game became very monotonous and tedious very quickly. This is one I would say many can skip and only collect if you're a hardcore collector. And I don't know if I saved the best for last, but I definitely saved my favorite game for last. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time. And despite this game being yet another adaptation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, I think this is one that is definitely worth playing on your Super Nintendo. Out of all the TMNT home releases up until this point, this is the first time I really feel like they hit it out of the park with their adaptation. The graphics are well done and look very close to the arcade as well as to the TV show. The music is fitting and catchy and definitely has not gotten tired over multiple playthroughs, for me, over the last 30 years. And the gameplay is the classic addictive style that you would expect from a perfect beat-em-up. There's really not much more I can say about this game other than you should definitely play it. Now, to keep this more realistic, I'm going to give this around a 9.5 out of 10, even though my personal feelings towards this game is a 10 out of 10. Looking at other reviews of this game, it definitely has gotten between an 8 and a 9.5 out of 10, so I would definitely go with the upper end of that spectrum, as this game, I think, is the perfect entry point for the beat-em-up genre, and if you like this game, then you can move on to things like Final Fight and some of the other ones on this system. And let's not forget, they're still making Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to this day, so there's something that this game and this media property has gotten right over the last 30+ years. Sadly, this is not a game I used to own back in the day, but it was a constant rental. Again, being one of those games I probably could have paid for with how many times that I rented it, but I never had all of the money at once to buy it. The side-scrolling beat-em-up genre is not one that I would have necessarily associated with the Super Nintendo, so when compiling my list of games for this review, I relied on a lot of outside sources, and I was surprised to see the amount of games I would end up playing. Overall, I've looked at about 25 games, and I've included most of them in this review. But if I had to narrow down the list to just the essentials, the one that would definitely take the prize of number 1 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time. In a very close second, I would recommend any of the Final Fight games, with my preference being number 3 or number 2. Fans of comic books will find a variety of titles to choose from between DC and Marvel, but I think the biggest surprise to me was how much I like games like Knights of the Round, as well as the Ninja Warriors. But I'm not willing to let my word be the final word on this genre, as I feel like I'm more of an outsider, as this is probably one of the genres I played the least back in the day, and still play the least today. So again, let me know in the comments if there are any side-scrolling beat-em-up games that I did not include in this video that should have been, or what you thought about the games I showcased in this video. Did I hit any of your favorites? And as I remind you to leave a like on this video on your way out, also don't forget to click on that subscribe button to be notified when I post the next part of this series, where we'll focus on the fighting games on the Super Nintendo. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A special thanks to those Patreons you see on screen. Also, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and click that subscribe button on your way out. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.